The sound kept echoing into his ears, the sound of people screaming, everyone saying get them out of here, get me out of here. The sound did not stop but tended to increase. Lee Giyoung subconsciously began to have countless questions about whose screaming belonged to and where was this. Slowly waking up, he gently held his forehead with his hand. The greatest pain along with the screams here made him feel tired. Slightly squinting his eyes, he vaguely saw the situation in front of him, before his eyes. His face is countless people, everyone is in a state of panic, fear, they are screaming, quickly release them, but what he cares about is who are those people. His body began to slowly wake up, he squatted slightly and touched the floor. There were countless sparkling purple lights on the floor right now, but why was there light on the floor? He thought to himself. And when he raised his head to look up, the image of a beautiful statue of a goddess, radiating light appeared before his eyes. Everyone here suddenly saw a monster. With two sharp fangs sticking out, they began to scream in panic and fear. Some people were scared and trembling and said, "What kind of creature is that?" A person nearby replied, "You idiot, this can't be true." The guy next to him immediately followed and replied, "Yes, everything is fake." A woman in the crowd immediately took voice asked, "Is this a hidden camera?" The man next to her immediately laughed and replied, "Mincio was right. It was probably a hidden camera, but how could there be a monster?" Lee Giyoung had a gray face and thought to himself that it was just a hidden camera, but who did these things? If not, then what is the situation? Just now he was clearly still at home. Going back to Lee Giyoung's memories, at that time he still remembers being at home with his family eating rice. While chewing rice, then suddenly the phone next to me showed up with a notification. He picked up the phone and read it. It turned out it was a message introducing a new game. He thought this was a newly released game. Out of curiosity, he immediately clicked on. His memories could only stop at that moment. After that he couldn't remember anything anymore. Lee Giyoung held his forehead and trembled in fear. The crowd of people behind him, he kept screaming and banging on the door, demanding to be released. He mumbled in annoyance, why did he scream like that? It was really cramped and uncomfortable here, so he turned his back to the crowd and found a cool place for himself. Suddenly, a blonde guy in the crowd was constantly trying to comfort his spirit. Everyone's, hey everyone, it seems like we're all in the same situation, don't you remember anything? Suddenly he grabbed Lee Giyoung's shoulder and asked, do you know what's going on? Because of his question, he had to think and be able to contact other people. It was neither a dream nor a hallucination, but there was no feeling that anything was reasonable. Suddenly emitted like burning smoke at the foot of that beautiful statue of the goddess. Everyone there saw this scene and immediately shouted loudly. No one could distinguish whether it was fire or just light. The monster started making gru-gru sounds, and suddenly a sound came from the beautiful statue of the goddess. Hello everyone to another world. First of all, thank you for accepting the invitation. Our invitation. Suddenly a loud voice came from the crowd. Invitation? Are you kidding? What's up? Who are you? Countless questions from everyone. Sounds still coming from the statue. You have been chosen to become warriors to save the dying planet. The crowd is still countless words. Damn, what nonsense, is this a hidden camera? Call the police. The voice in the statue continues to be heard, regardless of what everyone else says below. From now on, everyone please remember everything I say. This is directly related to the situation. Next is your life. Not everyone can return. Only a few people can overcome the challenge. Lee Giyoung heard that and immediately panicked and shouted, what? One of the crowd there also spoke up, stop listening to nonsense, let's go out. The voice in the statue said again, I repeat again, to be able to return alive, we must overcome all challenges, try to become the last survivors. First of all, the place you are standing is called the starting point. You can also think of it as the waiting room. It is shaped like ancient Egyptian tower. There are many essential items here such as food, water and many different types of weapons. When Lee Giyoung heard that, he immediately felt like he knew something. The sound from the statue continued, adding that in this world each individual will have a special profession, and some people will also have unique characteristics. Lee Giyoung heard this and vaguely realized that this world, he seemed to have seen in a game or novel. The sound from the statue continued. There are a total of 4 levels. Common, Hero, Epic and Legendary. Now the common weapons are here. You will use them to protect yourself. The words just came out. Everyone has a weapon falling into their hands. By Lee Giyoung is a seemingly heavy sword. He used the sword with all his strength and walked to a nearby window. Suddenly there was a collision outside the window, making a loud noise. He looked out and felt nothing. Shocked, punches were thrown at the door but the window was unharmed. He was shocked and thought to himself, "Damn this statue, why didn't it break?" The sound from the statue continued. "You come here from many places and have many different personalities. This place was created to train and help you grow. If you say, window, status, you can understand what I mean." Everyone heard that. Everyone repeated the saying, status window. Lee Giyoung did the same, he also repeated that saying. Suddenly, a status box appears before each person's eyes, on which the name of each individual will be introduced. Lee Giyoung's window appears on which is written, name Lee Giyoung, age 20 years, characteristics. Has a clear strategy, his career is currently unemployed, his title is currently unavailable. The status window also notes that he needs to put in more effort. Under the information there will be the circular frame is like a compass, on which specific numbers will clearly appear. Like Lee Giyoung's muscle strength is currently 10 and is currently in the general class, physical strength is 11 and is currently in the high school level. Mental endurance persistence is at level 12 and at common level. Magic power is currently absent and also at common level. In terms of intelligence it is at level 19 and at heroic level. In terms of luck it is at level 21 and is classified as hero level. Agility at level 11 and also at common level. Under that circular frame, below are 3 parts of characteristics, leveling limit and equipment. That's all that, window status, appeared. Lee Giyoung muttered and thought. Muscle strength is at 10, physical strength is only 11, is this good or not? Suddenly the status window appeared stating that the characteristics had been collected. He was surprised and asked again, characteristics? The system immediately explained that some people would have unique characteristics. He cursed under his breath and quickly clicked collect. Status window suddenly appeared with hidden eyes, hero rank. Its use is to be able to view everyone's rankings, talents and status window. Sure enough, it wasn't wrong, he turned around and could see a series of people inside. Here. He immediately took a look at everyone's status, and saw that the people nearby were at the leveling limit. His total rating was now a common trait, the system also notified him. Must try hard. Suddenly a notification appeared, he quickly clicked on it. The window now displayed the total rating for him. The index that player Lee Giyoung has is the lowest. Even if you try hard, it may not be effective. No matter how hard you work, it will be difficult to surpass the standard of 3rd place. The stats have no hope at all. Intelligence and luck I won't mention it, but let's see, you don't have to swing a sword or try any other weapons. Anyway, the ranking is very clear. Read the entire review but what's left in my mind his current words are the words Lee Giyoung is the lowest, no hope, useless, intelligence and luck, try something else. Even if you work hard, there is no hope, it's okay but swing a good sword. Not necessary, anyway the ranking is too obvious. Lee Giyoung was completely shocked when he read it. He didn't think he would have to endure this situation. What worried him was should I just have to endure like this? Suddenly the system spoke up. Okay everyone, good luck. As soon as the words fell, the sound of punches at the window became stronger and stronger. And they finally saw the thing that was making those sounds. The window was broken. A group of monsters suddenly rushed in here. They made hideous sounds and rushed to attack everyone. Sounds full of helpless fear rang out. Save me, help me. Lee Giyoung stood motionless in place. Suddenly a loud sound came out. Shut up. Pick up your weapon. Don't you see the status window in front of you? Pick up your weapon, like a joke. The person speaking is Park Deokgu. And Lee Giyoung was also awakened by this person. Because he saw Park Deokgu's status frame. On his status page, it shows that muscle strength is 20 hero level. Physical strength is 21 hero level, and endurance is 30 hero level. Lee Giyoung focuses on Park Deokgu's endurance but smiled falsely. He was extremely excited because he had finally found the flesh shield. The monsters made hideous sounds. They rushed in and bit everyone's shoulders. Those who were bitten by them had nothing to do but watch them bite them. Those who were strong were shouted to each other, quickly picked up their weapons. Lee Giyoung's spirit was pumped with blood. He held the sword tightly and told Park Deokgu that if you take the lead, I will help you. You heard these words. Immediately asked, "Big brother, are you going to fight him?" With a determined face he said, "That's right, it's impossible to sit in one place like that, anyway, I have to try it once." When Park Deokgu heard that, his face became extremely excited and he said, obeying. When Big Brother said that, I immediately became stronger, but inside I was so crazy. When I heard that, I didn't blame him but told him to quickly get out of here. Suddenly both of them felt something. Something was approaching. Sure enough, a monster suddenly jumped out from nowhere and attacked him from behind. Before he could react, he saw that the monster had been hit by Lee Ki-young's attack. Until he lost consciousness. He quickly turned around and called, Big brother. That person is now trembling and shouting at you. What are you doing? It's a fight, don't you hurry up and stop it? Do you want to die? After saying that, he immediately turned around and ran forward, not forgetting to tell him that if he didn't want to die, he should hurry up. He immediately replied yes, I know, and ran after him. Cough 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 sound of the monsters. They must be extremely satisfied after sucking the blood of so many people. Lee Ki-young immediately gritted his teeth as if he had made up his mind. He thought he would kill them first like grabbing a pig. In front of him, two small monsters suddenly appeared. As soon as they approached, they were knocked unconscious by his attack. The other one quickly changed direction and jumped out behind him to attack, but unfortunately it was knocked unconscious by Park Deokgu's shield. He immediately turned around and asked worriedly, Big brother, are you okay? He immediately thought to himself, is it really useful? After that, he immediately said thank you and reminded him not to forget to bring weapons. He obediently said I know. So the two of them, one in front and one in the back, ran towards the door and were attacked by monsters. Both of them were extremely happy. Were they about to escape? Suddenly there was a cry for help from behind. Both of them stopped. They both turned to look and saw a boy surrounded by a group of monsters. They were preparing to tear him apart. That young man, he made pleading sounds begging the two of them to save him. Lee Ki-young was silent for a while without saying anything. Park Deokgu from behind saw this and softly called out to him. He held tightly. His hand like that had made up his mind about something. The young man was scared. Tears kept falling. Lee Ki-young had now rushed towards the young man. He was extremely happy because he thought that he himself had been saved. But contrary to what he thought, Lee Ki-young did not save him, but was holding the bundle right next to him. He just ran back with the bundle of money, leave him alone. In the end, the young man could not resist the fate of being bitten to death by those monsters. Park Deokgu saw that and shouted loudly, Big brother. But he also didn't want to I have to do that, but in the current situation, this is probably the only way I can do it. With the bundle you're holding in your hand, it's the straw that saved your life. A moment later the two of them were hiding in a small prison. He asked him what should we do now? He replied, if I knew, why would I be here? Then came his sighs. He felt like you were such a pitiful big boy. Then he said, first we need to find out where the hell this is, where you used to play game already. He immediately replied, why is there anyone who has never played games? He immediately said, status window, rankings, nicknames, equipment, occupations, don't you know where these things are commonly found? He listened to what he said and vaguely realized that they were players fighting monsters with the lowest level. He then said, you should think we are in a game. Seeing that, he immediately asked, so we have to do? Must level up. The older brother said, maybe this is a system. If we kill monsters here we can level up. If we fight we can get a profession. This is a bit difficult, but first we need become stronger. Luckily we have shields and weapons with water and food. At least our situation is still a little better than others. Suddenly a monster is outside the door was looking at the two of them, but strangely it didn't attack the two of them. Lee Ki-young immediately looked at its status window. It was called a devouring devil, only 5 years old, instinctive tendencies, characteristics of a low-level monster, poor eyesight and intelligence, poor physical strength. Physical strength 11 normal levels, physical strength 14 normal levels, endurance 12 normal levels, magic power no normal level, intelligence 3 normal levels, luck 10 normal levels, agility 15 normal levels. Lee Ki-young only knew after looking at its status window that it was blind. He immediately turned to Park Deok-gu and signaled him to keep quiet. Then he gingerly held the sword. Park Deok-gu saw that and immediately sweat dropped. Could boss possibly kill it? Quick as lightning, he immediately rushed out and stabbed the monster with one sword. But it was impossible to stab it to death with one sword, so he continuously pulled it out and stabbed it, stabbing it as he did so. Say damn it, die it, die it. Finally the monster couldn't take it anymore, it screamed loudly and died. Finally destroying that monster, he gasped for air, as if he couldn't believe what he had done. And at this time, the window also announced that his muscle strength had increased by 1 level, from 10 to 11. He immediately chuckled to himself. Received experience points from killing monsters, so it was exactly as I expected. Park Deok-gu next to him saw him smiling and immediately looked at him in surprise. He quickly turned to look at him and then went to pat him. Patted him on the shoulder and said, remember, if I can do it then you can do it too. No, you will do better than me. Then thought to myself, your persistence can be up to 30. At this time, Park Deok-gu spoke up, what is your name, big brother? He arrogantly said, yes remember, my name is Lee Giyoung, then silently added in his heart, from now on I will be the one to devour your bones. You on the other side, he happily replied, I'm Park Deok-gu, can I call you Lee Giyoung? He immediately replied, yes, but you. Then without saying anything, he took the sword to cut the cloth. Then he stood and measuring on his body, which made it extremely difficult for him. I understand, what are you doing? He immediately told him to wait a bit. It turned out that he made a shield so that he could use the shield more easily. At this time, the system notified him that he was given a point for durability. As for Park Deok-gu, who didn't know anything at this moment, he only felt extremely happy and touched. He thought to himself that if he made a shield, it must be strong. Park Deok-gu in the back kept saying thank you to him. Thank you very much, Lee Giyoung, if you have any work to do in the future, just leave it to me. Upon hearing that, I immediately replied, okay first I have to get out of this place first. Then I turned around and smiled. For you, when you get out of here, start by stopping idleness and then go. Suddenly loud footsteps rang out along with the appearance of a girl. She was restless, ran and called for help. Lee Giyoung saw that and immediately turned around and told him to run away. He stammered and said yes. Lee Giyoung looked towards the monster over there and thought to himself, what is it? It's crazy, there are so many monsters. How can you fight? What the hell is that thing? At this moment, he immediately summoned the status window to see, and what he saw in front of him made him feel unbelievable. She actually has talent that is limited in growth. Muscular strength 10 rare levels. Physical strength 12 heroic levels, endurance 14 rare levels, magic power 10 legendary levels, intelligence 22 heroic levels, luck 23 heroic levels, rare level 11 agility. Looking at the magical power data, he couldn't believe it. Park Deok-gu behind him panicked and reminded him, if you don't run away, why are you still standing there? As for Lee Giyoung, he was still in a state of shock. He thought about young Hayan, who possessed legendary-level magic power. Lee Giyoung quickly shouted to fight. Park Deok-gu quickly saved him. Hearing that, he hesitantly asked, there are 3 of them, can we win? Lee Giyoung immediately said he was going to turn the corner. He replied and said he understood what the big brother meant. The girl in front was trying to run quickly towards them. He immediately signaled her quickly go this way. She was breathing heavily but still quickly replied yes. She finally ran to where they said. The giant monster was approaching them. It had realized where they were hiding. It immediately used its giant hand to hit Park Deok-gu's shield very hard. The 2 of them tried their best to fight back against the monster. At this point, Lee Giyoung immediately jumped up and gave the monster a strong blow. Park Deok-gu immediately relaxed his body and wiped away his sweat. At that moment he heard countless sounds coming from ahead. He immediately shouted to Lee Giyoung on the other side, quickly moving away from the side because the monsters were coming. Suddenly he shouted loudly, "Big brother!" The reason he shouted so loudly was because Lee Giyoung suddenly appeared from behind. There appeared a monster. It was clawing its hand at him. He panicked and turned around to look. When that huge hand was approaching in an instant, suddenly a sword appeared. This newcomer could defeat that monster with just one simple move. When he saw this situation, he was extremely surprised and wondered what was in his heart that had caused the monster to die. Monsters become like that. Immediately, he turned to look. Then what caught his eye was a pair of feet wearing black leather shoes, dragging along a sword with sharp shoes. From a distance, he couldn't see his face clearly, only this is a young person. He stepped closer, he could clearly see the other person's face. This person was still very young, blue eyes, cold face. Two people didn't say a word, just looked at each other eye to eye. But what surprised Lee Giyoung was when he looked at the frame of his status, which displayed and confirmed the technical index. Player's abilities and maturity limits. Kim Hyunsung. Age 22, characterized as a wise mediator. Occupation is general level control, i.e. Regressor of Altanus, controls the start of the second match too. The loser, the person with the destiny of sacrifice, and the enlightened person. Physical strength 19 epic levels. Physical strength 23 epic levels. Endurance 22 heroic levels. Magic power 11 heroic levels. Intelligence 18 heroic levels. Luck 23 heroic levels. Elite 28 epic levels. What caught his attention especially was the words regressor of Altanus. That made it extremely difficult for him, like, regression is going back in time? Behind Park Deokgu suddenly spoke up, "Thank you. My name is Park Deokgu, who are you?" He on the other side also spoke, "I am Kim Hyunsung." As for Lee Giyoung, he was still immersed in Kim Hyunsung's status frame. At this time the system gave an overall assessment, completely surprised. Practice. It is impossible for this player to be so perfect that he cannot speak. To accurately predict the strength hidden in this player, such as strength, physical strength and intelligence, is impossible. If compared to player Lee Giyoung, if you don't compare like that, it's a pity for him. I hope all players feel honored to talk to him. Then, looking back at luck, his physical strength and intelligence again. This made him feel extremely shocked. He thought that this was not the first time for him. He now looked at him and suddenly spoke up, "You seem to be very skilled at fighting, right?" Park Deokgu heard what he said, so he excitedly ran out and hugged Lee Giyoung's neck and said, "He is big brother Lee Giyoung, but then again, we can't compare to you. Didn't you defeat those monsters with just one move? Your luck is also very good. And right now I'm just pondering whether I should steal his characteristics or not." And he finally did it. In the window appears the information, Legendary Swordmaster. You are rewarded with cumulative points for using the sword. The destructive power increases proportionally with time. Swings his sword at a fixed rate. After looking at his status, I thought to myself that he's really good, he really makes others jealous. I just now noticed where he is. The other side is looking at him strangely. He thought to himself, "Why are you looking at me so strangely?" Could it be that he already knew that he was peeping on his characteristics? Then he suddenly spoke up, "I'm Lee Giyoung, your name is Kim Hyunsung, right? Thank you for helping us. Did you come here alone? It must be very difficult, right?" In his heart, he secretly thought, right now he should play the role of a friendly beauty queen, so he immediately extended his hand, indicating that he wanted to shake hands with the other person. Kim Hyunsung on the opposite side also gradually walked forward. Shake hands with him and say, "At first it was like that, but now I'm trying to gather the survivors. I've also thought about setting up a tent for the survivors somewhere safe." He immediately smiled and asked, "Tent?" Then suddenly he stopped and asked him how many people did he need. He thought for a moment and said there were about 30 people who could fight. In fact, if I could team up with people who shared the same ideals as me like Park Deokgu and Lee Giyoung, then how good it is. Hearing these words, he immediately became sharp and thought, he is like a danger, because he knows how to spit out those sweet words, so he is the one to reconcile. Or a survival base? If you team up with guys like him, you'll die. But looking back at him, you remember the name Regressor of Altanus. This guy knows how to take over this place and even the secrets of the world. Hey, there's no reason for me to refuse a good relationship with this guy. So you smiled at him and said, "We'll do it as you planned. From now on, is your job just to support?" He immediately replied that yes, I am a prosecutor. Park Deokgu was surprised and said, "He's already in front of the prosecutor, really admirable." And right now he was paying attention to the girl in front of him. Just now, she was sitting face down on the ground in that hiding place. He immediately went over and raised his hand to tell her, "Can you stand up? If it doesn't feel right, I'll go with you." She hesitated and said thank you to him. Kim Hyunsung only then noticed the two of them. After seeing him, he ran quickly to them. He was surprised and asked who this person was. She then hesitantly said I was Hayan. He heard that and happily replied that it was nice to meet you, I'm Kim Hyunsung. When he saw this scene he was extremely surprised. Why did he become so excited? He continued to ask if she was okay. She immediately clung tightly to his hand and replied that I was fine. He then hesitantly continued to say, if possible, can I call you Hayan? Anytime you feel unwell or uncomfortable anywhere, you can tell me. She was still the same, still clinging tightly to his hand and answering him, yes I am fine, I really am not what's wrong. I glanced at him and thought of his nicknames. Regressor of Altanus, the second match, the one who cannot overcome, the enlightened one, the one who must sacrifice. That name is someone who can see to the end of the world, someone like him can change everything that happens in the future. Once the flow of time turns back, so first of all he probably has grasped everything things that can be taken advantage of. Among them are definitely humans. Hayan suddenly spoke up. She said it a bit late, but thank you for saving me, I'll do it right away. She smiled and replied that she should just do it. She saw his smiling face and his voice when he answered and immediately blushed. He whispered thinking about Hayan who possesses hidden abilities with as a magician. Kim Hyunsung, the hero who started the second battle. Turns out she is your treasure, he thought with a sly smile. You guys, let's fight together to the end. After leaving that place, they were led by Kim Hyunsung to his location. When Park Deok-gu arrived, he couldn't help but express his joy. When he arrived here, there were a lot of people here, this place was much better than before. He immediately asked him excitedly, how did he find this place? He replied, I just discovered it by accident. Lee Giyoung heard that and thought in his heart, he already knew. At this time, in front of them, a girl suddenly ran up and called. Named Kim Hyunsung. The girl with brown eyes and a black mole in the corner of her left eye, along with shoulder-length chestnut hair. She was very excited and asked him, are you back, Mr. Kim? Hyunsung? Looks like you came back with a new member? He gently called Ms. Lee Jae-hee's name. The guy behind him immediately thought, so cute, who is she? She immediately continued, I was very worried because you came home late. Then she turned to Park Deok-gu and asked, who are these people? Kim Hyunsung immediately replied, they are the ones who will stay here with us this time. She saw you and thought to herself that this person is scary tall. As for you, you are using magic eyes right now. To investigate her status window. The name is Lee Jae-hee, 29 years old. Her tendency is to be selfish, her career is unemployed, she doesn't have a title, looking at this board she can only cheat. I thought I needed to try harder. Looking at the two of them again, she was 29 years old but she could easily call him a 22-year-old in a sweet way. He looked again. In terms of statistics, physical strength 5 common levels, physical strength 9 common levels, endurance 8 common levels, magic power 0 common levels, intelligence 18 regression levels, destiny 12 common level, elite 9 common level. After looking at Lee Jae-hee's statistics for a while, he felt like a pile of trash. Moreover, is he still willing to be selfish? The other side she immediately asked him, now that I remember, what are their identities? He introduced himself first, I'm Park Deok-gu, on the other side is Lee Giyoung, next to him is. The girl on this side then continued, I'm Hayan, I hope everyone can help. The two girls just looked at each other without saying anything. Especially Lee Jae-hee's expression, looking at her right now was like evaluating someone else. Then he looked back at her. Park Deok-gu with a large body and a weapon initially got a passing score. On the contrary, Hayan with a limp leg and the person who was struggling because of Hayan received a failing score. Lee Jae-hee immediately radiated happiness and went back to talk to Park Deok-gu. Does that mean Park Deok-gu is a giant? Just by looking at it, you'll immediately know that you've defeated a lot of monsters, right? So he excitedly pointed to him standing behind and said, that's right, I just took down a few of those. All thanks to big brother Lee Giyoung standing here, not thanks to he's the end of us all. Did she just stand up and say that? Maybe I don't believe what he said. Then he happily continued to talk, but anyway, it's nice to meet everyone. First, I'll lead everyone to a place to rest because the accommodations for men and women are different, so Ms. Hayan should come with me first." Then she turned to him and asked, "Is that okay, Mr. Kim Hyunsung?" He immediately replied, "Everyone depends on her." Then he turned around and smiled happily at him and said, "I'm also very happy to meet you, Lee Giyoung." When I saw that, I immediately thought, "This woman is of the same kind to me." Then he smiled brightly and said, "Yes, I'm very happy too." Then he looked towards everyone present here. Each of them has a different mood, just as happiness. It seems like this place is really safe, right? But it's not about me, it's about them. I'll just turn into a meat shield. The next day Kim Hyunsung approached them and asked them if they slept well last night. Park Deok-gu replied in an excited mood, "Thanks to you, I had a peaceful night's sleep." As for Lee Giyoung, he just woke up. Then he immediately called Kim Hyunsung and said, Now I realize that not many people can fight, right? Forgive me, but how do you maintain a place like this?" He then pondered and said, "In fact, things are not that good. Food and water are always in short supply, there is a shortage of fighting manpower, and there is a need to take care of up to 30 people. I am afraid I won't be able to last much longer." Hearing these words, he immediately said, "Mr. Kim Hyunsung, the food we brought ran out in an instant, and we still had to deal with the monsters right in front of us. In this situation, everything shows that what we have is only a disadvantage." As if understanding what he said, he quickly replied, "They are not a burden." He immediately replied, "Say no? They are a burden. I am not someone who will give anything to anyone." After that sentence, the two of them fell silent without saying another word. The atmosphere became tense, more suffocated than ever. Suddenly Park Deok-gu spoke up, "No, it's not like I want to leave, boss." He immediately said, "It's not like that, it's just that if we stay here, we won't get anything. Nothing." Kim Hyunsung heard these words and immediately pondered. But on this side, Lee Giyoung continued, "We will also stand side by side with you, fight together. Of course this friend will also think like me." When he heard that, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Thank you." He continued, "Actually, I somewhat know what Kim Hyunsung said. Thinking, do you want to survive together and escape from here? I certainly understand and sympathize with Kim Hyunsung. However, I am different from you. I cannot sacrifice my life for others. Do we have to let them all go together? Even if you call me selfish, I will." There were no words to say. Kim Hyunsung heard that and immediately said, "No way I can understand you. Of course you will have what you want." He heard these words, he was extremely surprised. A person known as a wise peacemaker, always sacrificing for justice, can negotiate so easily? So he approached him and said, "If that's the case, then I'll also ask for it, my brother Kim Hyunsung's future plans." But in his heart he secretly thought, "Dear fake regression, I also want to partake in one. Get in, there's no way I'm going to let you suck honey alone." He said frankly, "I also want to get involved in Kim Hyunsung's plan." He heard these words and said nothing. Both surprised, but also frankly admitted that he already knew. He immediately said, "Right at the starting point, that strange notification sound clearly brought down two options, only one of them. Only a small number of people who have completed the tutorial can go to the continent. Please inform again, only a small number of people who have completed the tutorial can go to the continent. Attack and survival." However, in my opinion, survival is practically an impossible choice. I don't know whether a few people can monopolize the resources of the many, but if your goal is survival, isn't it unreasonable to gather so many people who do not directly participate in the war? Even if you don't get eaten by a monster, you will die from starvation anyway. Isn't that something everyone can deduce?" After hearing everything you said, he was silent for a while and said, "I understand what you're saying, so let's have a good cooperation." In my mind, I immediately thought of reality. If you're a fake regression, you just need to combine them together, he said. That's exactly what I meant. Then he saw Kim Hyunsung's eyes looking at him a little. Transformation. He thinks he's not a strong person, but who knows, maybe he's a useful talent in his eyes. Or in other words, something like a tactician or an administrator. After a while they returned to the location to kill the monster. Now Park Deok-gu was in the back using his shield to attack the monster in front. Making it spin around, shouted full of anger, so he shouted loudly, "Big brother." The guy over there heard that and immediately replied that he knew, "Park Deok-gu, I'm coming." Before he could arrive, Kim Hyunsung quickly arrived. His feet ran forward, he jumped up and slashed the monster. Making it unable to react in time, he could only scream loudly and fall to the ground. When he saw this scene, he thought, it must be the eyes. I'm not exaggerating, Kim Hyunsung is so good. Kim Hyunsung turned around and said to him, in front there seem to be a few more, I'll hold them off for a while, there are 2 left. People, he quickly replied, I know. Then immediately told Park Deokgu over there, Park Deokgu, quickly go get the food. He immediately replied, he already got it all, big brother, but it's because of the food. There weren't as many monsters as I thought, it was the first time I saw them gathering like that. I said, maybe someone had already cleaned up the nearby area first. He asked, big brother was what about Kim Hyunsung? No, could that person be a real-life kendo player? He crossed his arms and said, I don't know, or maybe it's some similar sport. Maybe it's just a vocation? Hearing that, he immediately said sadly, is it a natural job? Seeing that he was in a bad mood, he patted his shoulder and said, don't worry too much, my job will open soon. After all, you have helped me a lot, he replied. Actually, I didn't do anything, it's all thanks to you. I immediately said, it's not like that, without you, getting here would have been much more difficult. Seeing what he said, he was immediately deeply moved, his eyes filled with tears and he softly called out to Big Brother. Then suddenly he saw a golden light shining in front of Lee Ki-young's body. It turned out that his vocation was opened, the status window appears, it says, some professions have been opened, to see detailed instructions, click on each icon, followed by the sword will be warrior is at the common job level. Arrow is the archer at the common job level. Next is the magician at the common job level and general at the rare job level. Lee Ki-young saw this in his heart immediately was extremely excited. He thought it was great even faster than he thought. He looked at the general's frame and was curious about what it was. Then the system gives a clear explanation of an archer capable of long-range attacks, possessing basic knowledge of bows and arrows. Later you can switch to melee classes such as thieves and assassins, as well as like the ability to switch to higher archer classes, such as soul archers and magic archers, and the elite level will increase by 3 levels. Regarding magicians, a ranged class that can be used use magic, allowing you to possess basic knowledge of magic. Then you can change to magic classes such as dark wizard, alchemist, summoner. Magic power increases by 3 levels. He immediately thought that using an archer could shoot monsters at long range. Using a magician would increase his magic power up to 3 levels. The rest is a general, this is an almost impossible job. In combat, players use this job instead of standing on the front line. You will take a step back to grasp the situation and give orders. The field of view is wide. There is a little more information about the job class that the general has. Can change to, increase willpower by 1 level. He immediately thought to himself, what the heck is field of vision? Kim Hyunsung behind asked him, has his vocation been opened? He immediately replied, Kim Hyunsung, that's right. First there is the common rank including warriors, archers, magicians and then the legendary rank has generals. He heard so I was surprised and asked, General? When I heard that, I immediately thought that this general position was a good job, but in fact it was a trap. Park Deokgu who was there heard that and said excitedly, Big brother, choose the general. I don't understand why you think I suit that so well. I immediately said, is that so? He continued, even though he didn't say it out loud, don't you think you're completely like a leader? Wow, if Big Brother chooses the general, he will win for sure. Just imagine standing and watching Big Brother swing his hands fiercely behind you. That's enough for me. I heard him say in my heart, I thought to myself. Sometimes he's more like a scammer than a commander. I don't even know how to use a word of war. Kim Hyunsung, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. He said that if he accepted a general, what he would receive would be too much. At least, the other vocations all increased their parameters to 3 levels. Hearing that, he immediately thought to himself that he indeed intended to stop him, but Park Deokgu objected to Kim Hyunsung's thoughts. He said, the big brother must be a general, a general. Kim Hyunsung thought for a while and said, Archer seems to suit Lee Ki-young. Park Deokgu said again. I said Big Brother suits general by the way. You're a general, quickly become a commander and give me orders, Big Brother. Kim Hyunsung said again, if you could provide long-range support, it would help a lot. Park Deokgu immediately responded. Uncle, oh God told Big Brother to be a general. The job to save Big Brother's soul is the general, must be the general unconditionally. The two of them, one right, one boy, just like that. Continuing each other's words, when Kim Hyunsung spoke but the archer, before he could finish his sentence, he shouted loudly the voice of general. But if he chose the archer, Park Deokgu shouted loudly the voice of general. He said he was indeed an archer. He got angry and shouted loudly at the general. The two of them each had their own opinion. The situation became more difficult than ever. He had been between the two of them since just now. I could only laugh, ignoring the two guys arguing. In my heart I immediately thought that these two guys were really annoying. Because of them, my mind was all mixed up. After that, I immediately looked at the job board again. Then, as if he had made up his mind about what he had chosen, he immediately clicked on. Suddenly a bright yellow light suddenly surrounded him. Two people argued. Over there, seeing this, they immediately became silent. They asked each other, what's going on? Has he already chosen? So they both called him, they rushed to him and asked, General or Archer? Which did you choose? Which one is it? So the two of them quickly ran towards him and asked, are you the general? Not an archer, right? He immediately scratched his neck and said, I choose a magician. Park Deokgu seemed shocked when he heard that. He was sad to say, I couldn't believe he didn't choose general. As for Kim Hyunsung, can I ask you, Lee Giyoung, why you chose a magician? Hearing that, he scratched his head and said, I just chose based on my feelings. Hearing his answer, he immediately said, oh so that's it. In his heart he thought, he feels sorry for this guy. Because I didn't choose the archer? Actually, I have a reason to choose like that. I'm not suited to using my body so archers are a bit unsuitable. Generals are also not a bad choice but the stacks are too low. Is a magician the right choice? The thing that helps me increase my intelligence isn't bad at all. This new magical knowledge is flowing in my head, one by one it's like being filled with magic power, it's amazing, then I'll try it. Check the index and when he took it out to check, in the overall rating, the system said. Sufficient capacity, it seems like you are still very desperate, but however, congratulations on finding your vocation. It must be very difficult for player Lee Giyoung to sense magic with his own talent. The increase in magic index by 3 levels is a good thing, however, I advise you not to expect too much about leveling up as a magician. The more you hope, the more you will be disappointed. After reading what the system conveyed, he immediately felt it was a pity. But in his heart he still said to himself, never mind, it's not that bad, I should use it right away. After loading the new magician into his body, he turned to ask Park Deokgu who was sad behind him. There, but Park Deokgu, have you finished choosing yet? He immediately scratched his head and said, well actually, there are shield soldiers and priests, but I haven't decided yet. Lee Giyoung and Kim Hyunsung both shouted in unison for shield soldiers. Hearing that, he stammered and said that, but the pastor didn't let him finish his sentence. The two of them shouted in unison for soldiers to hold shields. So the boy on the other side began to choose his vocation. Myself. When he finished choosing, Lee Giyoung asked, have you chosen? He happily raised the shield and said, I will listen to the words of the shield-bearing soldiers. He heard that and immediately smiled and said, good choice, very wise, but in my heart I thought to myself, great, he will be a literal meat shield. Kim Hyunsung suddenly spoke up to congratulate the two, so now let's go back. As if remembering something he suddenly said, wait, what about the food division? He immediately picked up the food bag and told him, this is enough for the two of us. He heard that and immediately stammered, but he immediately added, hey, okay. Then quickly go and give it to everyone to eat. I looked at the food packages in my hand and felt extremely moved. Immediately sincerely said thank you. Thank you everyone for giving this portion for me. Right now at the survival camp. Park Hayan is asking Lee Jae-hee, oh Kim Hyunsung, why hasn't he come back? I'm so hungry that I'm about to faint. Lee Jae-hee heard that and immediately told her, he'll be back soon, please bear with it a bit, Park Hayan. Hearing that, she immediately replied, oh really? I hope he comes home a little early. So she immediately raised the bread she was holding in her hand and asked her, should I eat this first? I still have leftovers. She heard that. Happily said thank you. "Oh yes, I will be very grateful to you." At this time, behind the two of them, there was a guy whose clothes were torn, his hands were shaking and he called out. Lee Jae-hee heard that and glanced at him. He asked, "What are you looking at? Want to eat?" He just raised his hand and replied, "Huh." Seeing that, she immediately broke the bread in half and said, There's no other way. This is yours, and this is Park Hae-young's share, miss." When I heard that, I immediately said thank you to Lee Jae-hee. When giving him the cake, she said, "You didn't touch anything but just lay there asking for food, emptying your mouth to dump the insects," along with the words. That's when she threw the bread down for him. He quickly picked it up and chewed it greedily, saying thank you to her while chewing. She said happily, "Very obedient, must eat well like that." That's right, it's true that insects are different. Suddenly she heard a noise over there. "So you guys have returned." She quickly ran over and said, "Oh brother Kim Hyunsung." The people there were also extremely happy because they knew the food had arrived, and their stomachs would be filled. Kim Hyunsung immediately gave her the food package and said, she immediately said, "Mr. Park Deok-gu and Mr. Lee Ki-young have also worked hard. I will help you handle this food bag." Kim Hyunsung heard that and immediately replied, "Yes, I am counting on you. Today I have a little work, so I'm leaving." Suddenly a strange guy wearing glasses came up behind Lee Ki-young and said, "Mr. Lee Ki-young should quickly share it with everyone." Hearing that, he just looked at him, then turned around and left. Park Deok-gu saw that and immediately ran after him and asked, "Big brother, aren't you really going to share it with everyone?" He immediately replied, "I already told you, we didn't come here to do charity." He immediately replied, "That's true, but anyway, it's a bit harsh." He immediately turned to said, "If you want to eat, you should at least pick up your sword and fight. Maybe Kim Hyunsung brought us here just to please them." Then he looked at Lee Jae-hee in the distance, handing out wages. Food for everyone. She is now extremely polite, gently giving food to everyone. But he doesn't think like that. He feels that when Kim Hyunsung is not here, she is the person in charge of management in this place. She is a typical manifestation of a two-faced person. When Kim Hyunsung is absent, she is no different from a queen. Could it be like that? Then he saw a group of people over there. Some people were so happy that they cried when they held a piece of bread in their hands. Looking over, there were still a few people struggling to carry a heavy stone, but had not received anything yet. Only now did he notice Yung Hayan carrying rocks over there. There was a guy looking at her and shouting, "Hurry up, please, a monster is pulling. What should I do next? How can that Yung Hayan be so slow? Oh, it's so annoying to death." Hearing those nagging words, she could only say sorry. That guy immediately stood there shouting to the people carrying rocks there, "What day is it? If you can't keep up with food, you should starve, you know?" The crowd quickly responded yes. I saw this scene and felt like I understood why our Yung Hayan was treated unfairly here. Then he called Park Deok-gu behind his back and said, "Do you still remember the Yung Hayan line we met yesterday?" He immediately replied, "Yes, she's the girl that Big Brother helped her with yesterday, right?" He immediately gave his bag of food to him and said, "Give this to her and keep protecting her for me." When he heard that, he was extremely confused and asked, "I know, but why suddenly?" As if he thought of something. He then smiled falsely and said, "Oh, I know, boss, you can rest assured that I'll leave this job to Park Deok-gu. Yung Hayan, you're carrying rocks right now." He saw and thought to himself, how lonely my Yung Hayan was. No one is as good to you as this, right? Isn't that right? Normally, when you are helped when you are weakest and most difficult, you will feel very grateful, right, Yung Hayan? I'm very trustworthy, right? Are you counting on me? When Park Deok-gu was about to arrive, he immediately called out to Yung Hayan. But the scene in front of him shocked him and him. Because at this time, someone approached Yung Hayan and gave that the bread was brought to her. She saw that and immediately said thank you. He saw that and thought to himself, what the hell is going on in his heart? That bastard. Sok-woo was smiling brightly and gave the bread to Yung Hayan. Seeing that, he got angry and said, "Do you dare to approach my treasure? What? Okay, anyway, it's too shameless, in a place where you don't even have enough to eat. Isn't it too obvious to suddenly treat her so well? Did he do it to achieve his own goals or did he have something else in mind?" Park Deok-gu saw this scene and immediately turned around to call him. He immediately waved his hand signaling to keep going. He understood and approached Yung Hayan. Yung Hyan's name at this time was Sok-woo was telling Yung Hyan that I was quite close to Lee Jae-hee. I had secretly brought it here for her a while ago. When she heard that, she immediately replied, yes. He gave her the bread and said, take it. She looked at the bread in his hand and hesitantly said yes, I'm okay. He continued to say don't refuse, please accept it, I worked very hard to get it. You heard, so she replied then I'm sorry. Then she raised her hands to receive and bowed her head to say thank you to him. Thank you for taking care of me like this. He smiled and said, oh so much. It doesn't mean anything. In Yung Hyan's head, she was thinking how grateful she was. Really, if Sok-woo and Lee Giyoung weren't here, maybe I would have. When thinking about Lee Giyoung, I suddenly blushed, but then I remembered what Lee Giyoung is doing right now. Over here, Sok-woo suddenly spoke up, there's something wrong, Miss Yung Hyan. If you don't mind, can we get closer? In her heart, she secretly thought that he wanted to get close to her. So she immediately replied yes, I want that too. Hearing what she said, he started to hold her hand. His face now became extremely despicable as he called her name, Hayan. When she saw that, she was scared and screamed, let me go. He saw that and asked, why did you just agree with me? She was trembling all over right now and asked why he suddenly became like that. Please let me go. When he heard that, his face immediately turned gloomy and said, this person really, why doesn't he understand anything at all? Hey Yung Hyan, do you think I'm doing charity work? When she heard that, she was confused and asked why. He still held her hand tightly and said that if you go, you have to have something in return. She still didn't understand, so she asked him what he meant. Seeing that, he immediately said, or should I just say it out loud? If you want to survive here, be a little more reasonable with me, you stupid girl, do you still not understand the situation? Hearing that, she immediately begged him, please don't be like that. At this time, Park Deok-gu had come to them. He clasped his hands together and said, hey so-and-so, you should let go. She came out while I was still talking nicely. When he saw that, he got angry and said, what the hell are you? Park Deok-gu immediately used force to hit the guy's hand that was holding Yung Hyan. That made him scream loudly in pain, and you got angry and said, I didn't expect there were trash bastards like you here. Or I haven't beaten you yet, so don't pretend to fight like that. He was angry and yelled at you, this son of a bitch. You immediately grabbed him by the collar, then threw a punch that sent him flying away. Lee Jae-hee and Park Ha-young and everyone here saw this and were shocked and talked to each other. And he was still leisurely in the crowd grabbing bread. At this time, Sok-woo was beaten. His face was bruised, he screamed loudly, blood, bleeding. Just like that, he lay on the ground and screamed loudly. Seeing that, he immediately said, people will think I just gave birth to a baby. Hey, don't lie there making a fuss. I haven't used any force yet. Seeing that he hadn't stopped, he became angry and said, hey, you're making a bit of a noise, maybe I'll help you shut up. Close your mouth, okay? Suddenly Yung Hyan ran in front of Park Deok-gu and said, stop, stop. I'm fine, so Park Deok-gu stop, this is a bit. Suddenly Lee Jae-hee came running from somewhere. Shout loudly, stop quickly. After saying that, she ran out to help Sok-woo and said, Mr. Sok-woo, are you okay? The guy immediately said, I'm fine. Then she turned around and shouted loudly, Mr. Park Deok-gu, using violence internally is taboo, what are you doing? Instead, he immediately said, he held her hand and harassed her, I just removed his hand, I saw it with my own eyes. So she was surprised and asked Sok-woo, what did you say? Sok-woo, is what Park Deok-gu said true? He immediately denied it and said it wasn't like that. Of course, I held Ms. Yung Hyan's hand just because of a little misunderstanding, there's no crime in it. When you heard what he said, you got angry and cursed, this bastard, so you chose death. Lee Jae-hee turned to him and said, Sok-woo, please tell me the whole story clearly. So he said, it's me and I just want closer to Ms. Yung Hyan. She also responded positively to my suggestion, so I see something wrong here. So Lee Jae-hee immediately stood up and walked towards Yung Hyan. Said, Yung Hyan would like you to stop hiding behind and come out and say clearly, is what Sok-woo just said true or not? She hesitantly said, that, but before she could say it, the people here started talking. What's going on? What's wrong with them? I don't know, from what I heard, it seems like the two of them fought because of that girl. That's ridiculous, even in here. Does she think she's a pitiful heroine? She saw the people talking and immediately thought, all of them, why are they looking at me with those eyes? Tears began to fall, she thought she had done nothing wrong. Remembering her past, her parents died, no one stood by her side. Tears fell more and more. She softly said that what he said was true. But then he came back, he suddenly held my hand tightly, I mean even though I wanted to be close to each other no matter what. But the way he talked made me a bit surprised. Lee Jae-hee on the other side heard that and immediately said, I don't understand what you're talking about. She sighed and said, so that means Sok-woo really wants to be close to her, and it's also true that she accepted. She said in surprise, why but I. Because I didn't know that he meant that, I'm sorry. She heard that and said coldly, hey Ms. Hayan, do you think you can solve it by just crying like a child? Park Deok-gu too, of course in a situation like this. I really appreciate your help because of the danger to women, but before clarifying the situation, you should not act rashly. If you think like that, this time you are a bit careless. In this situation, it is still unclear who is the victim and who is the harmer. Young Hayan heard that and immediately bowed down. Say, I'm sorry. So Lee Jae-hee immediately went to touch Sok-woo's shoulder and said, apologizing won't solve anything. The person you need to apologize to is not me, but the victim. Mr. Sok-woo needs to receive a legitimate apology. When Young Hayan heard these words, he was extremely shocked. It was clear that the wrong person was the guy, but according to her, she was the one at fault. She saw her standing still like that and immediately said, why are you standing there? Why don't you kneel down and beg for forgiveness? So she trembled and stammered and said, I'm sorry. As for Lee Giyoung, he saw this drama right now, he suddenly smiled and thought, this is exactly the moment. So he immediately walked towards them and said, what are you guys doing? What game is that? He approached and asked what was going on. He went out to them and thought to himself that he didn't think there would be such a person. Whatever happened between them honestly had nothing to do with me. What's important right now is. They pushed Young Hayan into a dead end. At this time Lee Jae-hee suddenly spoke up, Mr. Lee Giyoung, you came at the right time. Right now, before she could finish her sentence he said, Lee Jae-hee, are you awake? No? When she heard what he said, she was extremely surprised and asked why. What you're saying? He immediately said, do you think this place is an amusement park? If monsters find out and come to this place because of your noise, will anyone be responsible? When the crowd heard what he said, they started to stir. Some said, why didn't I think of that now, will they find out? Shush, just keep quiet. Lee Jae-hee immediately said, but the situation now. He then interrupted, what is the situation now? I stood and watched from afar and already understood the general outline of the story. Ms. Lee Jae-hee, as she said just now, is a situation where it is not clear who is the victim and who is the harmer, right? You can lean on me. If a herd forces a person into a corner like that, who will be harmed? She heard that and screamed loudly, but it was clear that the wrong person was Young Hayan. He immediately replied, Ms. Lee Jae-hee, can you confirm that Mr. Sok-woo is really innocent? When she heard his rebuttal, she clenched her teeth and couldn't say a word. When he saw that, he felt extremely happy. Of course it's impossible, if you can reason. With certainty, all responsibilities will automatically return to their rightful place. So he pretended to hold his forehead and complain. I didn't think that everyone would come together to bully an innocent girl like that. If Kim Hyunsung saw this scene, he would not be able to think more liberally about this matter. Everyone in the crowd heard that and their faces fell, they started to become scared. No, it's impossible, if Kim Hyunsung leaves us, we'll definitely die. He took that opportunity to approach her and said, as far as I can see, Ms. Young Hayan. Absolutely not that type of person. When she heard what he said, she was extremely moved. She could only stare at him in bewilderment. Lee Jae-hee on the other side immediately shouted loudly, what's wrong with Lee Giyoung? Do you know? It hasn't been a few days since the two of you met each other. He sighed and said, listen, Lee Jae-hee. If you told the friend you first met at school that we'd get closer to each other in the future, yes. Meaning, please sleep with me? What does intimacy and physical contact have to do with anything? Don't be led by them, think carefully. She snorted and said, to be honest, there was nothing wrong with what he said. Everyone in the crowd began to change direction. Direction, they said, yes, thinking about it, What they were talking about was a bit unreasonable. Yes, Lee Giyoung was right. To be honest, isn't this going against Sok-woo? Yes. Once hey, I'm on Ying Hyan's side. Ying Hyan? That girl isn't that nice, but it's a bit. I think what Lee Giyoung said earlier is right. Do we have to sleep together when we're close? So perverted, that's right. Lee Jae-hee, it's too much. Lee Giyoung understands that problem very well. Seeing that the situation was no longer on her side, Lee Jae-hee became angry and shouted loudly, "What's wrong with everyone?" So she turned to him and shouted loudly, "Lee Giyoung, do you really want things to turn out like this?" But what shocked her so much was his current expression. The expression of a winner, full of arrogance, as if to tell her that from now on she should look closely at. "Now the king of this place is me." She immediately remained silent without saying another word. So he immediately said, "Why are you all gathered here?" He immediately turned to the guy and said, "Mr. Sok-woo first needs to bandage his wound. The two of you over there should give Mr. Sok-woo a hand." The two people who were called immediately agreed and came out, helped him stand up. Seeing that, he continued talking, and before Kim Hyunsung comes back, "Everyone, please clean up this place and start your daily work, because the incident just now may have caused trouble. When I touched a monster, I asked Mr. Park Deokgu to scout around for me." When he heard it, he excitedly shouted, "It was clear, sir." He then continued, "And Ms. Ying Hyan can see me for a bit?" She immediately replied, "Yes." People around started talking again, but was that girl really like that? Didn't you agree with Lee Giyoung just now? Sok-woo is indeed a pervert, but isn't she also overdoing it? From the beginning, I didn't like her. I thought Lee Giyoung was right and what you said sounded more like being forced. When he heard these words, he immediately thought, Ying Hyan, don't let her. Pay attention to them, because the important thing is that she is in a position of favor from those in power. Lee Jae-hee has been silent all this time, she is angrily biting her nails. He and she went to a nearby table but sat and talked to each other. He politely invited her to sit down, she was still crying and sat down on the chair. She stammered and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't really mean it like that, it's just that." He quickly continued, "I know, Ms. Ying Hyan did nothing wrong. Besides, I hope you can talk to me more comfortably." She heard that right away. Using her hand to wipe away the tears, she slowly told, "That's the story." Suddenly that guy Sok-woo. He immediately continued, "Yes, what happened to that guy Sok-woo?" She replied, "He just pulled my hand and shouted." Then she immediately described his appearance at that time to him. When he saw that, he immediately said, "Oh my God, did he do that?" After a while, she trembled and continued telling, "That's what happened. Then suddenly Park Deokgu came to beat him. Then Lee Jae-hee came. He listened to her and thought to himself, finally what are we talking about?" Honestly, I couldn't concentrate on her words, but now the important thing here is the ability to empathize, so he immediately told her, "Ms. Ying Hyan, you are very sad. Right?" She immediately replied, "No, it's not. I feel better now, thank you, Mr. Giyoung." He replied, "You don't need to thank me, in that situation of course." She quickly said, "No, I mean thank you for trusting me. Every time we meet you help me, but I haven't done anything for you. Can I ask Mr. Giyoung, how can you treat me so well?" He smiled and replied, "I just did what I thought was right. If you ask why, I have a younger sister at home who is the same age as you." He immediately remembered when he was at home. His younger sister always kicks the door open and comes in to ask him for money. Every time I see her I think of her, actually in my heart I think it's all a lie. That girl is completely different from Ying Hyan, but to sympathize with her I have to pretend. She heard that and immediately said, "Ah, sorry, I stopped myself." He quickly replied, "It's okay, so what about you?" She immediately told her story. "I have 2 older sisters but we haven't had any contact for a long time," he replied, "So that's it, what about your parents?" She immediately clenched her hands and said, "They were no longer there." He heard that and immediately said, "We are very similar." She heard that and was surprised and asked, "Lee Giyoung was also?" "Ah, we are really similar." He smiled and said, "Yes, that's true," secretly thinking in his heart, what we have in common is the prerequisite to easily sympathize with someone else. So he said again, "Continue, if you don't feel uncomfortable then I hope we can talk a little more freely, that's what I want." Seeing that, she panicked and asked, "Oh yes, what is that? How are you?" He quickly replied, "Let's start with something easy to talk about first." She replied, "Yes, then that is comfortable." He laughed loudly and said, "I will be very comfortable." So she immediately replied, "Yes, no, I know." The guy opposite me immediately smiled with satisfaction. Then he used his magic eyes to look at her status window. The status panel was still the same as when he saw it. For the first time, she still hasn't opened her vocation. Then he looked at her overall assessment, which read, "You have strong potential. If you have to become a magician either way, you will become a magician different from Lee Giyoung, so you don't need to worry too much." After reading, he whispered, thinking that he must quickly make her become a magician. After, if we're closer, should I bring up magic stories with her? Suddenly there were footsteps approaching where they were sitting. That person said, "Sorry, can I bother you for a moment, Lee Giyoung?" My guess was right. The person coming there was Lee Jae-hee. So he immediately told Hayan, "Please stay away for now, I have to talk for a bit." She saw that and stood up, said goodbye to him and left. After she left, Lee Jae-hee immediately came and sat down. She hesitantly said, "I came to apologize, I'm truly sorry for causing trouble." He saw that and immediately said, "It's okay. I also feel guilty for overreacting." She quickly replied, "No, it's my fault. Lee Giyoung was just doing what he needed to do. Let's do it." In his heart, he silently thought, "I really can't adapt to this sister." She continued to say yes, and he continued, "Yes, go ahead," she said. "Can you leave this matter to me to resolve?" After thinking carefully, "I feel very sorry for Hayan, and Sok-woo too, if you leave that job to me." You seemed to understand what she wanted to say, so you interrupted and just did as you wanted. That you want. The management of this place is already under the responsibility of Ms. Lee Jae-hee. "I'm sorry I overstepped," she quickly said. "It's not like that, that's not what I meant." He gently replied, "Yes, I know what I'm saying. However, it would be better if you didn't care or interfere in what I do like before." Silently thinking in my heart, "Lee Jae-hee, please remember what people like us who have nothing in hand can do to survive. There are only political tricks. If you want to hold everything in your hands, then so do I, so don't went beyond the limit." She suddenly stood up and sat close to him. She changed her voice dramatically, hugged his arm and said, "Lee Giyoung, I understand what you mean. I won't cross the line from now on, sorry for making you worry. Do you know what I really think? Lee Giyoung, I like ambitious people. The more I look back, the more I'm sure you're my type. How about we become close now?" He immediately asked frankly, "Are you approaching me now?" She immediately leaned close to his ear and said, "Hayan, aren't you trying to control me to keep an eye on her? That weak child, even if it's not Sok-woo, it will still be there. I will take care of him from now on. At this point I probably fully understand what you mean, right?" He heard what she said and immediately burst out laughing. He immediately leaned closer to her and said, "It seems like we have a lot in common, right?" She touched his jaw and said, "Yes, that's definitely it." Then the two gave each other a kiss. A few months later, on a homemade raised platform, Sok-woo was bending down. "Say sorry to everyone present here," he said. "I want to send Ms. Hayan a deep apology." Everyone there immediately started talking to each other. "Do you know any news? Ms. Lee Jae-hee has sided with Lee Giyoung, right?" The other person immediately replied, "Oh, I heard, so now Sok-woo is apologizing. But it seems like Lee Jae-hee has no other choice. To be honest, Lee Giyoung's status is now higher than Lee Jae-hee. Why is that Lee Giyoung so protective of Hayan? Hayan knows what that kid did to create such a commotion. That kid? Is it intentionally pretending to be stupid?" The other guy quickly sighed, "Shush, in case someone hears, be quiet." When he heard that, he immediately turned his face dark and didn't say anything. That night he sat in the same place as Lee Jae-hee and told her, "Anyway, Sok-woo has already handled it. Please watch over Hayan carefully. If anything happens, notify me immediately." She immediately replied, "I know, in general you want everything to end smoothly. It's beautiful and no one makes a fuss anymore, right? Then you need to create a situation where Hayan is forced to rely on you, him. That's true. But what do you really mean by that Hayan girl? I'm so attached to it." He was silent for a moment then said, "I don't need to know." When she heard that, she panicked and said, "How could you? Why do you suddenly call me sister?" So she suddenly burst into tears. "You don't care, just think in your heart. Lee Jae-hee, I'm a master in politics, watch me turn the situation around. Honestly, then this handshake went quite smoothly. Thanks to her, Hayan has been complaining about her sad fate for the past few days. But brother, why am I so unhappy? Luckily I'm here, he immediately replied. No, I'm the one who should feel lucky to have Hayan by my side. Then he read the magic spell in his heart, heard the sound and had to respond, summoning fire. Immediately, a small flame appeared on his index finger. Hayan saw this scene and immediately admired him. He immediately thought, actually I haven't been just interested in Hayan's studies. Park Dok-Ji asked me, can I use the Kamehameha move now? It's an energy wave attack in Dragon Ball. Park Dok-Ji and I practiced together to get used to our respective roles, magician and shield soldier. The image is very important. Suppose if you want to create a fire like a firework like this, you have to imagine the real image and shout the spell. The problem is, my spells are all very stupid, they sound like my navel. Universe. At this moment he turned around and told her, Hayan has been in the same situation as me these past few days. Maybe you won't be able to use magic until you get a special job. It'll be quick though, we'll be hunting with Kim Hyunsung, so let's practice together until then. She smiled brightly and said, yes, leave it to me, sir. He immediately stood up and said, okay, so let's practice until today. She suddenly stammered and called out, brother, actually there are some things I don't quite understand, so you said that right away? She continued to say, yes, and recently my magic power has increased again. Hearing her say that, he immediately thought to himself, wow, my treasure is different, it is growing faster and faster. So, soon there will be a vocation, right? That's great, let's see how much it has increased, to what extent. So he immediately used his magic eye to see her status window. But what the hell is he looking at, she's already gone. He became a basic level magician. He couldn't believe what he saw. At this moment, the girl behind him suddenly called him. Brother, I still don't know how to do it. Using magic power. Hearing these things, his face darkened, she was lying, but since when?